21-year-old Alexandria Madison Kostial was born in Street Louis, Missouri to her parents, Keith and Cindy. Her friend Rachel once said that Allie had this way of making everyone laugh and making people feel genuinely loved. She was the kind of person who would help anyone, even if she had just met them. Sports were a huge part of her life growing up too. Back in school, she was involved in track and cheerleading, and her coach later said she never looked for the easy path. Challenges excited her, and hard work never scared her. When it came time for college, Allie decided to study business and marketing. She loved pink, pearls, and flowers, and honestly, that ended up being one of the reasons she chose the University of Mississippi. Her mom said the campus just felt alive to her because flowers were everywhere. The atmosphere made her happy in a way that's kind of hard to explain unless you felt it yourself. Guys, real quick before we continue, I'm actually curious where everyone's watching from. Tell me your city and what time it is for you right now. Thanks for watching, and definitely leave it down in the comments. All right, let's keep going.
Hemingway Stadium, Oxford, Mississippi. It is the home opener.
At the University of Mississippi, Allie joined the School of Business Administration and quickly threw herself into student life. She naturally became a leader wherever she went. Alongside her classes, she helped found her sorority chapter, became president of the Ole Miss Golf Club, and even started several running clubs. She taught yoga and Pilates, worked as both a nanny and a lifeguard, and spent time volunteering abroad in Peru and parts of Africa, teaching English to children. She was always moving, always doing something meaningful, like she was trying to squeeze every possible experience out of life. By the summer of 2019, Allie was entering her senior year and expected to graduate the following spring. While a lot of students went home for the summer, she stayed in Mississippi to take extra classes. Earlier in July, her parents came to visit her apartment. They spent time shopping together, bought beach-themed decorations for her room, and Allie convinced them to stay an extra day because she wanted her mom to cook some of her favorite meals. It was one of those normal family visits that, looking back later, becomes painfully important. That evening, Allie called her mom. Her voice sounded calm, maybe a little tired, because she had just woken up from a nap after an exam. She mentioned she was going out with friends later that night. Nothing about the conversation felt unusual. It was the kind of quick check-in families have every single day without thinking twice about it. Her social life was as busy as her academic one, so going out that night seemed completely normal. After hanging up, she stayed home a little longer, got ready, and headed out into the night just like she had many times before. Nobody around her could have imagined that such an ordinary evening would end the way it did. Nobody knew that this would be the last completely normal moment of her life. The next morning, around 10:30, a sheriff's deputy was driving through the Buford's Ridge area near Sardis Lake during a routine patrol. The place was incredibly isolated. Long winding roads cut through thick forests with no houses, no lights, and barely any signs of life except for an abandoned fishing camp nearby. Sometimes fishermen or college students on ATVs came through, but this definitely wasn't somewhere people casually visited, especially not alone in the middle of the night. At first, it felt like just another quiet patrol, but then something caught the deputy's attention. A body was lying on the ground, bloody, motionless. And almost immediately, it was obvious this wasn't some accident. This was a brutal murder. Allie had been shot over and over again, at least 9 times. Her belongings were scattered nearby, including her purse, driver's license, and student ID. Empty drink cans were also found at the scene, along with 11 shell casings. Everything about it looked deliberate, cold, and horrifying. Later, Lafayette County investigator Jarrett Bundren said he had never seen anything like it in his entire career. Not once had he worked a case where someone had been shot that many times. To him, it felt excessive, personal, and there was something else. Earlier that same night, around 2:15 in the morning, A local resident walking his dog had heard gunshots echo through the silence near the lake. At the time, it was just a strange sound in the distance. Nobody realized yet how important those shots would become. The scene was about 30 miles from campus, 30 miles from her apartment, her friends, and the life she knew. Police quickly identified her through her student ID and started contacting people close to her. And with every new phone call, investigators realized this case was only getting started.
Hey, Morgan, this is Micah East, Kostial County Sheriff's Department. I'm calling in regards to a friend of yours, Allie, Kostial.
Surveillance cameras from that night showed Allie leaving a bar called Funky's at 11:52 p.m. About 5 minutes later, she got into a silver minivan near Rooster's Blues House. Investigators confirmed through phone data and license plate information that it was an Uber. The driver safely dropped her off at her apartment and had no idea anything was wrong. Her Uber records matched perfectly, and her roommates confirmed she really did come home that night. But here's the thing, nobody heard her leave again later. And she never ordered another Uber. So somehow she left with someone else. Because without transportation, there was no way she could have ended up where her body was found.
An unbelievable tragedy no family would ever want to experience. A college student killed while far away from home. Good evening, I'm Ann Allred.
And I'm Mike Bush. A St. Louis County family is mourning the death of their 21-year-old daughter. Police found Allie Kostial's body near a lake in Mississippi over the weekend.
Saturday, during a routine patrol, deputies found the 21-year-old's body near a lake 20 miles from the Ole Miss campus.
To find out that she was brutally murdered, it's just shocking.
I spoke to Allie's dad, Keith, in person Monday morning, but he didn't want to go on camera. As you can imagine, he was visibly distraught. A sweet and genuine girl who always had a smile on her face.
She quite possibly was the nicest human being that I've ever met. Allie was just one of those people that would just constantly lift you up. So that's why it's so hard for me, and I think a lot of her other friends. It's just like, no one deserves this.
The sorority house pillars now don black bows in mourning. Alpha Phi also released a statement saying, in part, "We hope that those who were closest to Allie can find peace as they reflect on the lasting impact she made on the lives of her family members and friends."
The entire Ole Miss campus went into shock. Just the day before, Allie had been taking exams, laughing with friends, making plans for the future. Everything about her life looked normal. That's what made it so terrifying. People couldn't process how someone they had just spoken to yesterday could suddenly be gone forever. The campus atmosphere completely changed overnight. Places that were usually loud and full of energy suddenly felt tense and quiet, like everyone was trying to understand something impossible. The acting chancellor, Larry Sparks, released a statement. Allie was an active member of our community, with friends across the entire campus and a bright future ahead. Events like this remind us how important it is to support one another when we are faced with something we cannot understand. The University Counseling Center is open to anyone who needs support during this time of grief. We must find strength in what brings us together, even as we endure this unimaginable loss.
Steve Courtney, the memorial continues to grow outside of the high school here tonight. More flowers and balloons, photos of the Lindbergh High School graduate where this vigil here was held tonight. They decided to focus not on the horrors that happened just south of us in Mississippi, but instead focus on the life that Allie led.
I'll just never forget the lesson she taught me is, if you want to do something in life, go after it and never be afraid to be yourself.
Memories that will last a lifetime for friends who were forced to say goodbye too soon. Friends, classmates, and teachers of Allie Kostial gathered around the flagpole of Lindbergh High School tonight to say goodbye.
I think it really set in when I was talking about the memories that we had and looked out to see everyone that she impacted.
At the vigil, friends left notes and memories on a large sign they plan to give to her parents.
Just so they can see how much she actually impacted our community and everyone that loved her.
From the crowd, it's clear in her 21 years of life, Allie touched so many. These friends say they are thankful that they have each other to lean on, as well as this community. A visitation is planned for tomorrow. Funeral services will be held on Saturday. Live from Lindbergh High School, Alexis Odos, News 4.
As investigators interviewed students and friends, they started digging into every detail of Allie's recent life. They needed names, tensions, strange behavior, literally anything that might explain what happened.
This morning, a multi-agency manhunt is underway as concern grips this small Mississippi college town. Authorities hunting for a suspect in the apparent murder of Allie Kostial.
And this is what it looks like around the lake where authorities found her body. You can see a number of trees, also winding roads get you here. And I've only seen a few houses, so this area is very remote.
Kostial was studying marketing at the university where the deepening mystery has classmates on edge.
It makes you want to be more careful. I go out and go to Sardis with my friends all the time, and I run around my neighborhood at nighttime. Like, there's people out there you don't know. You feel like you can trust everybody, but maybe you can't.
While the Lafayette County Sheriff's Department is not releasing many details of the investigation, its investigators are following several leads. In a statement, the University of Mississippi offering its condolences.
And it's the unknown that is adding to the sense of concern for classmates and also residents in this area that is quieter right now because most students are away for the summer. In the meantime, the Mississippi Bureau of Investigations is helping in the search for answers. Cecilia?
Okay, Marcus, such a sad story there. Thank you.
When detectives searched Allie's room, they realized her phone was missing, but her Apple Watch had been left behind. Some of her messages were still synced to it, and those conversations eventually led investigators to one specific name, Brandon Thiesfeld. Allie had met Brandon back in 2016, and according to people around them, their relationship had always been unstable. Friends said he treated her badly, making cruel and degrading comments that often left her in tears. He would obsessively pursue her, then suddenly disappear, block her, and later come back again like nothing happened. Allie wanted something serious. She wanted a future, maybe even a family someday. Brandon didn't. Pretty much everyone around them felt the same way. She loved him far more than he loved her. People described him as someone who could act charming one minute and aggressive the next. Allie always tried to include him in her social circle, but most of her friends barely knew him because he avoided being around them. Over time, the instability of the relationship started wearing her down emotionally. Brandon's roommate Rex later described him as emotionally abusive. He said Brandon constantly gave Allie false hope and carried this arrogant attitude, always bragging about his father's money and acting like he could get away with anything. According to Rex, Brandon could be vulgar, rude, and cruel toward almost anyone. The synced messages from Allie's Apple Watch quickly made Brandon the main suspect. Those messages suggested Allie believed she might be pregnant and wanted to meet Brandon face-to-face to talk about what to do next. An autopsy later confirmed she was not pregnant at the time of her death, though investigators couldn't completely rule out the possibility that she had been earlier. Months before the murder, Allie had sent Brandon photos of unclear pregnancy tests. His response was blunt. He told her that if she was pregnant, they were not keeping it. He also said becoming a father at 22 would ruin his life. After that, Brandon started searching online for information about abortions, abortion pills, and questions like mother wants baby, father does not. Most of their later communication happened over the phone, but the messages investigators recovered showed Allie struggling emotionally. She kept trying to meet with him in person, sending long emotional messages and photos of more unclear pregnancy tests. At one point, she even told him she was bleeding heavily and thought something was wrong. Then, on July 18th, just before 2 a.m, Allie sent Brandon another photo of her stomach. That was only 2 days before she was killed. Not long after, Brandon asked if they could meet in person and talk. A few hours later, she was dead. Police contacted Brandon and asked him to come in for questioning. He claimed he couldn't make it that day, but promised to show up Monday morning. Monday came. He never arrived. Investigators immediately started tracking his phone. It quickly became clear he had no intention of turning himself in voluntarily. Data from his phone and bank cards showed him traveling from Oxford, Mississippi, toward Memphis, Tennessee. Authorities put out an alert for his truck, which stood out because of its personalized license plate reading, "Take It." An arrest warrant for murder was issued, and roughly 2 hours later, Brandon was found at a gas station and arrested. He was still wearing clothes stained with blood, and inside his truck, officers found a .40 caliber handgun, the same gun he had taken from his father's house. Earlier, he had even posted a Snapchat photo of the weapon with the caption, "Finally bringing my baby back to Oxford." Ballistics matched the gun to the shell casings found at the murder scene.
And that breaking news from Lafayette County, an arrest is made in a shooting death of Ole Miss student Allie Kostial. The person behind bars is another Ole Miss student. Chief Deputy Alan Wilburn said that Brandon Thiesfeld of Texas charged with Kostial's murder. Thiesfeld's Facebook page lists that he is a student at the University of Mississippi. Wilburn will not go into the particulars of the case, except that Brandon went before a judge this morning for his initial appearance. His booking photo will be released later this afternoon.
Inside Brandon's apartment, investigators discovered a handwritten note addressed to his parents. It read almost like a confession. In the letter, he wrote that he wasn't a good person and that something inside him had always felt broken. He talked about demons in his head and admitted he believed he would eventually get caught. He blamed cocaine and alcohol for making those thoughts worse and wrote that he expected either prison or death. He apologized for being a terrible son, but added that he knew his parents would still love him no matter what. His recent internet search history only deepened suspicions. Investigators found searches about silencers, weapons, serial killer Ted Bundy, methods of luring victims, domestic violence murders, restraint techniques, strangulation tools, and morph suits. Despite all of this, Brandon's father publicly insisted his son was innocent and asked people to respect the presumption of innocence until trial. Meanwhile, investigators pieced together the timeline from the night of July 19th. Earlier that evening, Allie had gone home after leaving the bars in Oxford. Around the same time, Brandon was at a friend's house with 6 beers and a handgun. Just before 1 a.m, he quietly left, got into his truck, and drove to pick her up. Allie slipped out of her apartment without waking her roommates and got into Brandon's truck, believing they were meeting to talk things through. After drinking and using cocaine, Brandon drove them nearly 45 minutes to the abandoned fishing camp near Sardis Lake. Cell phone data confirmed they traveled together the entire time. The farther they drove, the darker and more isolated the roads became. Thick forest surrounded them on both sides until they finally reached the abandoned camp in complete darkness. It's honestly terrifying to think about those final moments for Allie. Did she realize what was about to happen? Nobody knows, except Brandon. What investigators do know is that Brandon walked around a picnic table and repeatedly shot Allie from multiple angles. That Saturday, more than 100 people gathered for Allie's funeral. Her former track coach drove over 14 hours just to attend. He later said she was exactly the kind of kid who reminds coaches why they became coaches in the first place. After psychiatric evaluations, doctors determined Brandon was legally sane at the time of the murder. His attorney acknowledged that finding, but argued Brandon had been heavily intoxicated by drugs and alcohol. On August 30th, 2019, a grand jury indicted Brandon on capital murder charges. He pleaded not guilty. Prosecutors argued the case qualified as especially severe because investigators believed he lured Allie into the truck under false pretenses, making the crime both kidnapping and murder. They also made it clear they believed the pregnancy issue was the primary motive.
Ann and Mike, today the defense attorneys asked for a psychological evaluation. In the meantime, the accused killer, Brandon Thiesfeld, will stay in jail.
The family of Allie Kostial spoke for the first time, her cousin reading a short statement in court.
We pray for strength in the coming days and are thankful for the friends, neighbors, co-workers, and many others who have supported us.
Kostial's family traveled from St. Louis to Mississippi for the hearing. Brandon Thiesfeld is charged with murder. His attorney says he was going to request bond, but after he discovered new information, he decided to ask for a mental health evaluation. Outside of court, a handful of young women held signs saying justice for Allie.
It's incredibly difficult for us to have to deal with these kind of cases. And I know it's just terrible and difficult for them, not only to have to deal with that kind of loss, but then to have to come and face this.
By that point, the prosecution's case looked incredibly strong. Phone records placed them together the entire night. Messages suggested a motive connected to pregnancy. Blood-stained clothing was found during Brandon's arrest. The gun matched the evidence at the crime scene. And then there was the handwritten letter that sounded disturbingly close to a confession. Piece by piece, everything fit together. Still, the trial dragged on for almost 2 years because of delays and the pandemic. For Allie's family, every month of waiting made the pain feel heavier. Finally, on August 27th, 2021, Brandon Thiesfeld pleaded guilty, not to capital murder, which could have brought the death penalty, but to first-degree murder. That plea automatically removed the possibility of execution. Through his attorney, Brandon claimed the shooting wasn't planned. According to his version, they had both been drinking. He had also used cocaine, and at some point he started firing the gun into the air near the lake. He said Allie panicked, things spiraled out of control, and then he shot her. But the evidence told a very different story. This wasn't one shot or two. It was nearly 10. That doesn't look like panic. It looks deliberate, especially in a remote location where nobody could hear or witness anything. Prosecutors stated clearly that there was no doubt this was intentional murder. Even Brandon's own attorney admitted there was no explanation that could truly justify what happened. And maybe the most disturbing part of the whole story was this. Brandon didn't fit the image people usually expect. He came from a wealthy, supportive family. His father was a doctor. He attended a respected university. He was intelligent and had opportunities ahead of him. Nothing in his background clearly pointed toward a crime this horrific, which left one haunting question that still feels unanswered. What exactly caused everything to spiral into this? And at what moment did it become irreversible?
A new chapter in the tragedy tonight. Brandon Thiesfeld sentenced to life in prison after pleading guilty. Thiesfeld was led into a Mississippi courtroom today by 4 officers, handcuffed in a bright orange jumpsuit.
A tragic situation. It's akin to a Greek tragedy.
Brandon was sentenced to life in prison. But there was one detail that deeply upset many people. He would eventually become eligible for parole at age 65. For some, it was simply a legal technicality. For Allie's family, it felt like another reminder that true justice never fully exists in cases like this. For the first time during the court proceedings, Brandon finally showed emotion. Until then, he had seemed detached and cold. Standing in court, he quietly apologized to Allie's family and admitted there was no excuse for his actions. He said he had prayed for forgiveness and hoped that one day they might forgive him too. The courtroom stayed silent after he spoke, but nothing he said could change what happened. Brandon's mother, Carrie, also addressed the court. She said that when police first mentioned her son's name, she genuinely couldn't believe he could be involved. 2 years later, after learning more about the relationship and everything surrounding the case, she said she felt devastated for everyone affected and heartbroken that her son never shared what he had been struggling with. Then she turned her message toward other parents. She urged them to talk openly with their children and remind them there is no problem too overwhelming to discuss with family. At the end, she said their family would always pray for Allie's loved ones. Outside the courtroom, life slowly kept moving forward. But for the people who knew Allie, nothing ever felt completely normal again. Her friends launched a fundraiser with the goal of creating a mind and body studio inside the South Campus Recreation Center, a space dedicated to healing, balance, and wellness in her memory. It felt fitting because those were things Allie genuinely cared about. Her father, Keith, later shared something that hit a lot of people emotionally. Sometimes, he said, it still feels like his daughter is simply away at school somewhere, like she's far away and eventually coming home, because fully accepting reality means accepting that she never will. And in the end, the hardest moments weren't the headlines, the courtroom, or even the trial itself. It was the silence afterward. Those small, quiet moments between conversations, between routines, between ordinary parts of life. The moments when you're finally alone with your thoughts, and suddenly they become unbearably loud.
Up to do anything. She just wanted to live life to the fullest. She would walk in a room and just the whole room would light up. I always knew she was there, she was my person. I could just always count on her. I feel like I'm gonna like wake up tomorrow and it's gonna be over.
People who knew Allie say she seemed capable of achieving absolutely anything she wanted. She didn't just set goals, she lived through them completely. Whatever she cared about, she gave more than 100% of herself to it, and people around her felt that energy instantly. Photos and videos can never fully capture who someone really was. They freeze moments, sure, but they can't explain a person's thoughts, emotions, or presence. But sometimes those little moments still reveal something deeper. Allie loved sunsets. Not casually, she genuinely cherished them. She would stop whatever she was doing just to capture those bright, warm colors in the sky. Eventually, she even created a separate Instagram account dedicated entirely to sunset photos. Every image felt like its own tiny story, like a mood she wanted to preserve forever. And now those photos are what remain. Her friends say that whenever they see an especially beautiful sunset, they automatically think about her, and for just a second, it feels like she's still there with them somehow. So they quietly say hello to her in their minds while looking up at the sky. Her best friend Maddie once said, "I'm going to try to be happier like she was, to stay optimistic and live life fully the way she did. And I'll hold on to her smile so it can keep giving me strength to move forward." And honestly, maybe that's what truly stays behind after someone is gone. Not only memories, not only pictures, but the impact they leave inside other people.